I looked at storytelling to inform me about the world. And one weekend I guarded Diddy. I did see some things to where when all that happened, I knew, how did I look? What the? That is the power of image. One Klaus, I was the straight clown. You must obviously die. Post-service, identity crisis. I lost my identity when I got out. The reality is I never had one to begin with. Yeah, they say once a Marine, always a Marine. What's the core issue with the identity crisis? The two things I wanted to do as a kid, be in Army Special Operations and work in entertainment. Those are the two things.
Yeah.
Why did I want to work in entertainment? I think partially because I looked to entertainment, to movies, as who I should be.
Yeah.
I looked at storytelling to inform me about the world. So I just gravitated. I was a movie fanatic as a very young kid. Jump to, I'm now in Hollywood. We'll go back later, but
sure.
I'm now in Hollywood and I am bodyguarding. That was my, trying to, some people are waiters in Hollywood or bartenders. I was a bodyguard. That was my job while I was trying to make it in the entertainment industry.
Yeah.
And one weekend I guarded Diddy.
Okay.
True story. And no, I was not there for a party. I didn't see any of the crazy stuff. I did see some things to where when all that happened, I knew I had some context. But let me tell you, the reason I bring that story up is this. I spent 30 minutes with Diddy, the first 30 minutes that I spent with him. And we walked, it was in Las Vegas, and we, I think, took him from the car to the room. And I remember getting him at the car, walking through the entire length of the casino with him.
Yeah.
And then getting in the elevator. And he was walking through the casino like you'd expect Diddy to.
Sure.
In 2010, whatever it was, right?
Yeah. Like the rock star.
The rock star.
Yeah.
And then we get in the elevator and he goes, how did I look?
Oh, man.
And I'm like,
the first thing he said?
Not to me. It was just like to
one of his buddies or something.
His, posse or whatever.
Yeah.
And it was so, I literally kind of went, what the hell?
That's
right?
a very strange thing.
It was so contrasting. Like who he presented on that walk versus who he was when we got in the elevator.
Yeah.
Exploded my brain.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I was like, oh my God. And it just in that millisecond, I was like, that is the power of image.
Yeah. And that's the thing that, man, bro, I don't have, this is one of the reasons why I like people like yourself, like all these other folks that are, they don't try to portray themselves as anything. They just are the same person everywhere they go. Joe Rogan does a good job of it. Cameron Haynes, people like that. These other men that are out there, they're the same person no matter. Stephen Rennell is another good example. Like they're just the same person everywhere they go, whether they're walking through the casino floor, they're doing a podcast with somebody, or they're on a trip somewhere, or they're doing whatever activity. Like, that just sounds so exhausting, trying to like portray yourself as a certain thing. And for me, I don't have the energy for that. I barely have the energy to keep up with the workload that I've put on myself for the most part, in addition to like also having a career. Like it's much easier for me. And maybe this is something I've learned as I've gotten older, probably, it's much easier to just be yourself and just talk to people. Be a normal dude. You don't have to pretend to be like somebody else. And part of that comes with getting older and maturing and your brain maturing and stuff, because when I was younger, I was doing the same stuff that you're talking about.
Yeah. And I want to be very clear because you're kind of saying, oh, you're the same here. Like I wasn't always that way, just like you're saying.
Sure. And I wasn't either.
When I was younger, I felt, I could be completely different depending on, like when I was in high school, I was completely different. Yeah. In each class I was in.
Yeah.
Each class I was in, I was essentially a chameleon based on the dynamic of that group. Yeah. One class, I was the straight clown, talking almost constantly the entire class.
Yeah.
Another class, I could literally sit in the corner and not say a word. It would just, I would almost, like if you buy a shark in an aquarium, the shark grows to the size of the tank.
Okay. Yeah.
Do you know that?
Yeah,
right?
Yeah,
I was that shark. I grew to the size of my tank.
Okay.
And I remember, I don't know, it's like, I forget what year in high school, but I remember someone asking me, like, they had me in like 3 classes and they were kind of like, why are you so loud in this? You know what I mean? And I
started noticing it. They're like, they're finding me out.
Yeah. I was like,
I'm found out.
You must obviously die. I'll be back tomorrow in a black trench coat.
Yeah.
And, no, but I wasn't always that way. I used to change who I was based on the audience. And again, why? Well, simple. I can answer that very simply because I didn't know who I was.
Yeah.
And I want to say something about that real quick, which is one thing that I think veterans, not active duty, struggle with, but we see a common theme of post-service identity crisis. Very common.
Yeah, very common.
And most people, I would argue, would say, oh yeah, I when I got out, I lost who I was, right? I knew who I was. I had this, whatever. I was happy, good. Everything was fine. And then I got out, and then I lost my identity when I got out.
Yeah.
And then the mentality that I see very commonly is, if I could just get back to who I was, you know what I mean? I had it. I was good. If I could just get back to that. And make no mistake, I had that same thought for years.
Sure.
And it was only 2-3 years ago that I realized something very critical. And I want to say it because it's so important. It was so important for my personal growth. And that was, I didn't lose my identity when I got out of the military. The reality is I never had one to begin with.
And so you felt like you had to form a new one, or you like?
Well, so here's the point. First of all, no one could tell me if the job became their identity. No one can tell me that they had a strong enough identity prior to. If their job, if you had a strong enough identity, there's no possible way that the job could become your identity.
That's so.
It just couldn't happen. Right?
You see that so.
But isn't it so obvious when it's said that way? If the job became your identity, then by that logic, you didn't have a strong enough individual identity separately from anything, because the job became your identity. So what I flip it to is when I finally realized that, I'm like, oh my God, I didn't really have an identity to begin with. What actually happened was a very good effect. And that was, instead of trying to get back to who I was, suddenly I was free to go, well, who do I want to be?
Yeah.
And that's two very different things.
Yeah, for sure. I think what you're saying is spot on about like your identity crisis that military members have. I mean, you see it a lot. Usually the most insecure guys in the military, or gals too, I guess, the most insecure people I've seen in the veteran community and active service community are folks that are very insecure. They probably have a hard time identifying like who they are. And so that becomes like the career in the military becomes their entire identity, where, people that are a little bit more comfortable, a little less secure, a little more secure with themselves, and typically a lot of the time happier, are folks that they kind of know who they are, and like they didn't have to take their career and make that their entire personality, And I think I had an advantage in that sense, because when I joined the military, I was 27 when I went to recruit training, and I was like already a grown adult. My brain was already fully developed. I already knew what kind of a man I was. I knew what kind of a man I wanted to be. I knew what kind of things I wanted to do when I got older. And so I didn't come into the military having an identity crisis, needing to figure out who I was. I already knew who I was. And I viewed it as, hey, this is another opportunity for me to do something good with my life. Yeah. And this can add to my identity, because it becomes a part of your experience and a part of your life and your perspective, but it doesn't become the entirety of it, and so that's been, I think, something that was beneficial for me, is going in later in life when I was a little bit more mature. If I'd gone in when I was 18 years old and I didn't know who I was, that could very well have become my entire personality. And then if I had retired, I would probably be retiring right now if I joined when I was 18. And then that means that, then I'd be like, oh shit. Now I need to figure out, what am I going to do now? Who am I now?
Who am I without this job? Here's the sad part is, you're in the belly of the beast, because
the belly of the beast.
What I mean by that is, who makes it worse? Of all the services, who makes it the worst? The Marine Corps.
You think so?
Well, think about it, man. Once a Marine, always a Marine.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, I guess I see what you mean. So that does
what I'm saying is, like, the Marine Corps, more than any, and all of the services do it, but I would say the Marine Corps, above all the others, really pushes being a Marine as an identity.
Yeah, it's part of your personality and your identity.
They force it on you. It's not really your choice. And so when you are no longer an active duty Marine, they say once a Marine, always a Marine. Yeah, they say that. But like, let's be honest, there's a big difference between being in and being out. There just is. That's not taking away from anyone, but it's a big difference. And look, let's be honest, we know the difference. Yeah. When you are a Marine veteran, you don't actually think of yourself as an active duty Marine. You know what I mean? Like, you still look back and go, well, it was different when I was in, right? Yeah. And what I'm saying is, I think, we really have to be careful about going too much towards that Marine status. And again, I'm just using,
just an example.
Well, I'm using it because you're in the Marine Corps right now, but I'm like, Army same way, Marine Corps,
or like the Navy. Special operations community. There's a lot, whatever. My entire personality.
That's who I am. And you are something other than a Marine.
Sure.
Once a Marine, always Marine. Yes, that's true. Sure. But at the same time, you are something other. Always are and always were something other than just that title. Yeah. And again, we're talking about an identity crisis, and I'm going to swing it back to what's the core issue with the identity crisis? Self-worth.
Yeah.
And here's how.
Because I feel more valuable if I can say, I am this thing.
Well, why though?
Well, shit, I don't know.
I'll tell you exactly why. Because this took me years to figure out, and it's going to tie kind of what we talked about in childhood. You don't know what you don't know. So here's an example. When you grow up in a chaotic childhood, which is really what my book's about. Yeah. But when you grow up in that chaotic childhood, by the way, I'm using the word chaotic, not traumatic.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a very specific change of words. Yeah. And here's why. And again, this goes back to what you and I were just talking about in high school or in childhood. Yeah. The reason I use the word chaotic is because, as I said, you don't really have a good context for your childhood. Like, was it good? Was it bad? You don't really know as a kid. Yeah. And I found for myself, I look back in childhood and I was sad a lot. I mean, I was sad daily, to be honest with you. But I still didn't look back at my childhood and think it was bad. I wasn't sexually abused by my parents. Yeah. Or, well, I don't know if it's worse, but, or an uncle or, you know what I mean? Like that's bad, right? Yeah. So I was like, well, it could have been a lot worse. And I think veterans specifically are the type of people who go, oh, I could have had it worse, right? Yeah. And so I look back and go, oh, my childhood was fine. It's great. I didn't really think about it. And what it's taken me a lot of time to realize, when I started realizing that my fundamental core issue was self-worth. When that occurred to me, and it's a long story of how it did, but when I finally figured that out, then I had to look at my child and go, well, where did this lack of self-worth come from? And then I started looking at my childhood through not the lens of a child, but the lens of an adult. Yeah. And then I saw this. Was my childhood chaotic? Yes, absolutely, unquestionably, every single day. And what I now know is that chaos is traumatic to a child. Yeah. When I look back, ENing to school every day, was that traumatic? Was getting beat up by bullies traumatic? I mean, I just kind of saw it as normal. So I didn't really see it as traumatic. But now as an adult looking back going, oh shit. Yeah, I guess that was kind of traumatic. You know what I mean? It was absolutely chaotic. And that's my point. Chaos is traumatic to a child. So when you're in that environment and you never know safety. Yeah. I literally, and I'm not exaggerating with what I'm about to say right now, I peed my bed every single day from probably birth until I was a teenager.
Oh, wow.
No joke. Every single, night.
Why do you think that was?
For years and years and years and years and years, I thought it was because I was a loser. And I was so shameful over this lack of control over my body. And I mean, I can't tell you the amount of pain and judgment I caused myself on that.
Yeah. And that's one of those things that just happens and nobody else sees it, but you see it and you internalized all of that.
100%. Yeah. I mean, I hit it very well, like very well. Yeah. And, I only got caught once, which I think I do detail in the book, but I only got caught one time and, on a sleepover.
Oh no.
Yeah. But I didn't know at the time. I had no idea. I was a kid. I was a moron, right? Yeah. Looking back now, it was anxiety. I had so much anxiety about what was going to happen the next day. Yeah. Was I going to get, was I going to make it to school or was I going to get caught? Was my, dad going to whatever, or, you know what I mean? And there was so much anxiety that I peed my pants. Now it's easy to look back and understand, but I didn't know then. Yeah. And so where I'm going with it is when you grow up in a chaotic childhood, all worth comes externally. It comes from things outside of yourself. It comes from athletic ability. It comes from looks. It comes from if girls like him or not. It comes from money. It comes from material things. He's got like Jordan. Well, there were no Jordans back then, but he's got nice brand new shoes, a cool,
I got holes in my shoes. I don't give a damn.
There you go. Well, you have no worth, buddy.
Dude, I've had these here's my thing is like, well, and not to interrupt, but like when I was younger, I used to, one of the things, speaking of shoes, every new school year, we would show up to school on the first day of school, and everybody would have new shoes. Yeah. And I wouldn't, because we were poor.
No.
I was a poor kid. Like, my mom worked at Walmart as a cashier at one point. Like,
so did my mom.
Yeah,
right?
my dad washed dishes at a.
Well, it's Kmart, but same thing.
Well, yeah, same. My dad was a carpenter, and he like refinished furniture and stuff. He had his own business, but for the most part, like, he was washing dishes at an inn in the evenings and like working on furniture and stuff. So we grew up relatively poor, and I would show up to school and I'd have shoes from the 2 years ago, and like everybody else would have new shoes. Yeah. And I would compare myself, be like, 100%. Oh my God, my self-worth is nothing because look at these new shoes that they have, which is an external thing, like you're talking about.
You were gauging value.
I was gauging value. I was comparing my shoes to their shoes. And like, now as an adult, I've got holes in my shoes. I wear these every day. I've had them since 2023. I don't care. These are great shoes. I wear them to the gym. I lift in them every day. Like, that doesn't define who I am. That's just like, and in fact, now I look at it as like, those shoes got a lot of character, because they've been some places or whatever. It's your perspective. And as you get older, like, this is something that I think comes with getting older and maturing and like finding who you are and figuring out how to build your own self-worth within yourself based on part of it does have to do with good mentorship too. If you don't have good mentorship, man, you are going to be facing some adversity. Yeah. Like, especially trying to find your own self by yourself.
Yeah. So that's actually the interesting next piece on this is so I thought all worth was external.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, then to have worth, I need to have those things. I need to be better at athletics. I need girls to like me. I need to be better looking. Like, I need to somehow get money. So I'm looking, and as a kid, I'm like, okay, all worth is external. Yeah. And the crazy part about all this is when you live your life that way, and again, it's so crazy to say this, but I didn't even know that worth not based on something external was even theoretically possible. Yeah. Right. And so here's what took me a while to realize. So then I started going, once I had figured out that, which was about 2 years ago, I was like, okay, so then I started thinking about those kids that I actually knew well. So like one kid, let's say I see him at school, but I don't know his parents. So then I started thinking, well, what about the kids that had that confidence that I actually knew their parent? I knew them really well. Yeah. And it occurred to me, this is only like 2.5 years ago. And I realized, oh my God, yeah, that kid did have, his parents had money, let's say, or he did have this. That's true. But you know what he also had? His parents loved him. Yeah. His parents told him he was great. His parents instilled that self-worth in him. I saw it firsthand. And I did think it was weird back then, wow, his parents are really nice to him. Weirdos. I know, because obviously something's going on. Yeah, right? So he's obviously getting sexually abused at night.
Yeah, there's something happening.
Yeah, this is too perfect, right?
Yeah.
And so, but now looking back, and that's the crazy thing that I've now realized about even self-worth, is it either comes from like your parents, or it's psychosis.
Or it's psychosis.